Let's go.
Okay. Welcome everyone to episode 20 of the randInt podcast. We never thought we'd make it here. So huzzah.
We made
it. So just to recap, the episode where we look at how the random affects the everyday, or some other vague sort of notion of how random ties into things. In this episode, there's going to be another mini-so just because we've just not been very organized in terms of scheduling these properly. But we're going to go with another mini one. And we've decided one of the interesting things is we're going to be doing this in seasons. So this was kind of like the alpha version, if you like. And next year, we've already started coming up with a better plan on how to tackle some of the topics that we're going to do. To begin with, let's begin with how are you? So Chandra, how are you?
I'm all right. I've been getting reaccustomed to life not on a boat, which I have to say is definitely inferior.
He says currently sitting, like you can't see it at the moment, and like even on the video, it's like a random background, but he's sitting in his Tesla in office mode.
Yeah, so I would highly recommend this. What you can do in your Tesla is set up a seating position with the steering wheel out of the way, the seat all the way back, and it's office mode. So you've got a nice, comfortable, air-conditioned room, which you can park anywhere you want with a view and get some work done. And to boot, if your battery's low, you've got a battery that's going to keep your laptop charged pretty much for as long as you're going to stay awake.
You can charge a house, so you can probably charge your laptop.
Exactly. It's amazing. I would highly recommend it. It's the best office, actually. Though this week, interestingly, I did try out something relatively new for me, which was WeWork.
A new cafe?
It's kind of like a new cafe. But I tried out WeWork because somebody gave me a free coupon to use it for a day.
Hang on, they're still in business?
Yeah, they're still going.
Wow.
Going strong, apparently. They had 7 levels of a building in Perth. Yeah,
I walked past one yesterday, actually, and someone pointed it out. I thought they'd gone out of business because there's also a new company called Justco that have opened up in all the capital cities that are also like the WeWork, but not WeWork.
I wonder if they'll compete on the price because I'm in. Because I have to say, it was interesting. Like I found, just because I'm not in my usual routine, for example, having somewhere specific to go to do work off the whole week, that's got to be my most productive day I've had. I think part of it was the curry in me that I've got this free thing, so I need to get the best. I need to make the best of it.
All right, I see.
If somebody gives you the free food, which looks questionable, you're gonna eat it because it's free.
Well, duh, you have to.
Exactly.
Your genes will take care of it if it's not okay.
Correct. I was like, well, this is something I haven't paid for, so I better get the maximum amount of it. So I got there and I got so much work done. Not funny, like just was put me in a work mood because it was a nice place with nice lighting, good view, tick, tick, tick for my kind of style. And also I think the other thing was just because I felt like I had to get the most value out of it. I was like, oh, I better work lots because, it's called WeWork, so I better work.
Well, this is like, I've never understood how people like, how you sit in the dining table most of the time. This is why I'm in my little cramped study thing. Like, you can't see it in the background, but it's literally like a shoebox closet, but work happens here. So whenever I'm here, I'm in work mode. Whenever I'm not here, I'm not in work mode. And it's just like, I don't even have to think. It's like, here is to do something. If I'm not here, I don't have to do anything.
That's interesting.
And it's also like the other benefit is that if I'm outside of here, I never feel like I'm not like, does that make sense? Everywhere else is relaxed area and this is a work area. So the separation makes it like, this is why I always used to study in libraries and cafes. I just never wanted to work at home. Home was quiet time, like just me chilling sort of a thing. Anyway, so what else have you been up to? WeWork and otherwise.
So the other thing is I decided to go down a bit of a dark rabbit hole of I should look up crypto again. So the context, like I've been playing in the crypto space for a long time, like, many, many years ago.
Almost
But
made me fail my exams.
yeah, those
Almost burnt out my shed.
yeah, so it's been
You
great.
got
Like,
to tell that story.
well, for that one was back in the day that you could mine Bitcoin at home. The best way to do that was to build your own mining rig. You buy some computer parts, put it all together. But why would you just buy one when you could buy as many as you could possibly fit in to a garage, right? So Raffy happened to be somebody who had a garage with
Well,
their
it was
leg.
an outdoor shed that my cat used to use to nap in.
It was no longer for the cat.
Just for context, it was just a normal 240-volt socket. Chandra organized a electrician to come and put essentially an industrial cable in so that we could have high output currents going through. And at some point, it is what? You there?
Yep. Hi.
Oh, I think you just got out for a sec. No, I was just saying, like, you got the electrician to come and put the high voltage cables in. And then next thing I know, I got back from work one day and he's like, I bought you a fire extinguisher. I'm like, why? It's like, just in case it burns down.
Well, I was thinking safety, right? So there was about, I think at the peak, I think when they were all working, I think there was about 12 graphics cards there in your garage, all mining away. And that was interesting times. I remember like trying to basically I built all of these things into IKEA wireframe baskets because on the one hand you could get a computer server rack, or on the other side you could get zip ties, a piece of wood, and some IKEA wireframe baskets.
This is literally what it was.
And also the good thing about doing it with wireframe baskets is you can then get big ass fans for cheap from Bunnings, and ta-da, you've got a cooling solution.
By big ass fans, it's literally those box fans. So we had 2 box fans basically blowing the air around. And the thing with the wood and the cable ties is like the cat, because it was so warm, would go and lounge in it and swipe at the fans of the little CPUs and whatnot.
Had to close the garage eventually.
Well, no, because there was still a gap. He could sneak in through the window. Yeah. And the other thing was like the moment, like my power bill literally went up by 6x in like the space of a week. I just remember seeing one bill and like, when you get the graphs, so there was like my normal graphs, which are almost 0, and then the next one's like 10 times as big.
So, reasonable use of electricity, right?
So what's made you go down the crypto rabbit hole this time?
So I haven't sort of, looked back into the space for a while because I was like, oh yeah, cool. It was fun. But just curious to see what's been happening. And it seems like there's been a whole bunch of new developments happening on in the crypto world, and a whole bunch of things which kind of feel like what Bitcoin used to feel back in the day when it was idiots playing with stuff in their garage. And so there's a whole bunch of new protocols which are separate to Bitcoin, but more importantly, a whole bunch of new use cases. So for example, previously
NFTs, always NFTs.
So the NFT thing is now well established. So for context, basically being able to give a digital identity to anything really. So for example, you might have a picture, but you can give it a unique digital identity to say that you own the original of it.
Photocopies are just fine. Just right click and save the JPEG, man. You don't need an NFT.
It's like owning the Mona Lisa versus a photocopy of the Mona Lisa,
which is just as good. No one cares about the original, clearly.
Same. And a whole bunch of new things which are, basically, which is tied in nicely with the timing of this whole Facebook's metaverse thing, but basically trying to have alternate economies as well, and virtual banks starting to sprout up as well, which are using a whole bunch of new sort of innovations that have happened in the fancy word, if you want to look it up, is called decentralized finance.
Well, the interesting thing is like the traditional, like, one of the banks in Australia, Combank, is now going to have a built-in crypto wallet into the default banking app. So I'm not sure if it's so much decentralized as like everyone's just going that way.
So I think the thing is there's two things. One, the old school stuff is now becoming more accepted, but all of these new things that are happening, they're still on the fringe. To give you context, one of the interesting projects that I came across, which was a copy of another one that has done really well. The whole concept is, give us your money and we'll become a decentralized bank and loan money out to other people, and then you get paid interest. So then there's a whole bunch of people that copied, the original. And then there's one that copied the original and called themselves the ultimate Ponzi. Literally, that was the name of the project. There's a whole bunch of people that were excited about it and looking at it. And I remember I was looking at it too. I was like, oh, this looks fun. Like they had their whole white paper was written up in a pretty fun way where they were like, yeah, so our aim is to, we'll think of something later, but look, we're just going to try to make lots of money. And, I was like, oh, pretty cleverly written.
It's probably the most successful one as well.
Well, interestingly, what they did is they did a rug pull. So
this is where
what? Rug pull, where you take all the money given to you and you make a run for it.
Well, they kind of spelt it out,
I feel like that one was a little bit rude because they called themselves the ultimate Ponzi and then they pulled the money instead. Like, at least run a Ponzi.
It's like, damn nefarious people. They're not sticking to the word. Why didn't we see this coming?
Exactly. But it's that sort of thing which made me feel like back when crypto was just starting up, where maybe you bought real Bitcoin, maybe you just, made a credit card transaction to pay for nothing, like nobody knows. And the chance of you having the money that you thought you have is kind of like, Pandora's box. What is it? Schrodinger's cat. Maybe you got something, maybe you don't. Nowadays, if you buy your Bitcoin on Commonwealth Bank account, you've probably got Bitcoin. Whereas back in the day, if you bought Bitcoin, maybe you had it, maybe you didn't.
Well, I mean, back in the day, the Bitcoin, what did it mean is like there's some string of numbers and letters. I think that's Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's all it is still, but at least, people actually accept it. There's like a standardized format. You can't just add it to a wallet without it going, that doesn't look right. There's checks and some balances.
Yeah. It's gone from, if you shout Bitcoin in the tram, people will look at you funny. Whereas before it was, they would lock you up.
Fair enough. Okay, so you're in the rabbit hole. Whereas I have decided, I found that Melbourne has opened up. Did you know there is such a thing as restaurants you can sit down at?
What?
I allegedly have friends.
What? I would have never, I have not heard of this concept coming from Perth.
Yeah, so it literally, so like, I think it's been what, about a month? No, 3 weeks, because Melbourne Cup was, I think, beginning of this month. Yeah. So things have opened up fully, and as of this Friday, most of the restrictions, including capacity limits and everything, are gone. So almost back to normal, except for you have to wear masks at hospitals and whatnot.
But otherwise, like, does it feel normal going out to catch up with
friends? Yeah. Like just then I went to just grab some burgers and Melbourne's packed. Like all the, the South Bank front bars are packed. Like they're full. It's a Sunday night and they're relatively full and people are out and about and stuff. But I'm just not ready. Like not from it's just like, it's been nearly 2 years of very little socializing. It's too quick to go from that to like full belt. Just not ready. And the thing is, there are lots of like close friends, like ones that I caught up with today. I literally hadn't seen probably in 3-4 years. Even before that, it was hard to catch up with them. So it's like, wow, this feels like but now because everyone's catching up, everyone wants to catch up. And now there's Christmas parties. I'm like, oh no, wrong season to open up.
It's like, damn, I'm in Perth, I can't come.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've just decided no Christmas parties this year because I'm just like, I just can't. Like with all the catch-ups and whatnot, plus that, I'm like, I just can't deal with that level of socializing at that a rapid pace. Like, I enjoyed being a hermit.
So you're the one who's been like posting up all the anti-vax stuff, basically.
No.
Going down the reopening, just a little bit.
Well, it's like, I mean, I gotta say though, it's been like, no, lockdown for life. Then like, no, all breaks are off. I'm like, that was pretty rapid. Like every other place didn't either shut down as hard or did a gentle sort of a wean. Our gentle was like, yes, we're gonna go hard. No, let's just screw it.
And we're good. Yeah,
Yeah.
fair enough. It is a big sudden change, I guess.
Well, it literally in the space of 1 week, I had to I started running late for work because you kind of over 2 years get used to driving times, right? It's like, oh, I gotta leave at this point. You could tell that week I was running late every time. And I think everyone else was, because like driving aggression went through the roof because I think everyone else was running late. So,
Like,
no
why
one
is
would
all
let
these
you in,
people?
no one would
Yeah,
let you
why are they
pass.
not on?
Yeah. So, and like traffic volumes went from like, whatever it was to like triple, just like literally that Monday, you're like, whoa, okay, we're back in a big way, Although interestingly, I was at one of the cafes this morning, and they were saying that they're back to normal, but their busier days are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So people are probably taking Mondays and Fridays off because they've got flexible working hours. So this is probably a permanent change.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think it'll be good. Like, it'll be interesting to see what a work week looks like.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I'm taking a break from all the socializing by taking time off and like running away.
Where are you running away to?
I've got like a middle of the week break coming up in about 2 weeks, and the thing was I wanted to actually go interstate, but I can't so there's some weird rules, it's for international mainly, but I don't know which states have what rules coming back, where you can travel, again, you can't travel to all states in Australia if you're from Victoria or Sydney, but
I thought you guys can basically just travel between yourselves and everybody else is like, yeah, we're good.
yeah, I think Tasmania's opening or open, I can't remember, but basically if you go to certain spots, like if you go overseas, you can come back, you don't have to quarantine, you can run around, but you can't go to hospital.
Oh,
so
right.
Then I don't know if that applies to other states. And I'm like, I still in the too hard basket now. And like, I've only got 3 days. So it's not worth going anywhere and lining up in a plane. Although just going to a lounge would be fun. But yeah, so I've just decided, I've gotten so used to being in a 5K bubble that I just don't do it anymore. Like, I just don't go anywhere because for 2 years, you just kind of have workarounds. So you're just used to that bubble. Like, I just go for the same runs now. So to break out of that, I'm going to go to Torquay, so along the coast, about an hour away. And it's just like a hotel. It's just to force myself outside the 5K bubble and go, yep, far enough away that it's a holiday, it's a change in scenery, but not too far away because, I mean, at the end of the day, let's be realistic. That's just too much. That's just too much out there.
Ease into it.
Yeah. Anyway, that's. Is there anything else that you've been up to before we move on to the next segment?
No, not a lot, to be honest. Just trying to readjust to having to have real responsibilities.
Actually, on that note, did it feel any different? Because the boat would have been similar, right? Small group of local people to come back to. I mean, Perth, it's a city.
Yeah. There's a little bit of that, but Perth is generally kind of quiet to me anyway, so it's not too bad. But it's more just the real shift in what you're doing / perspective. Before, the day was very much get up, just take the day as it comes, whereas now it's like all that stuff I put off from before, kind of got to attend to it now.
So, back to work mode.
Well, I'm trying to decide by the end of this month to decide whether I should just go sailing around the world for a while. So
hang on. Why is this a decision and not just a given?
I figured I should put some thought into it. If anybody has done extended sailing before, please let me know. Reach out, leave a message.
Yeah. Message or email. So podcast@photosbyraffi.com. So we've hit episode 20. We might actually be getting our own domain name. So anyway, we'll see. But for the time being, that email will still be active. Also mid episode, subscribe and stuff.
Yeah.
Leave us a review. I actually really want to see what the feedback is.
Ooh, that'd be good.
Yeah, I'll even say put it on Apple Podcasts because I don't think you can comment on a Spotify podcast.
Apple Podcasts.
Oh, actually, on Spotify, if you're listening to this on Spotify, there's you can do questions like Q&As on Spotify. So I'll come up with some question because even the last episode's got it.
That's a new feature they just released. Hey.
Yeah. So I don't actually know. It comes up only on the app. It doesn't come up on the computer. Well, last time I checked anyway. Like the desktop app doesn't come in.
If you're a cool app person, leave us a Q&A.
Oh, I think we ask a question. Is there a question you want to ask the audience?
Oh, there is.
What?
Should
Oh,
I?
yeah.
Should,
Huh?
should I get a boat and sail around the world for a few years? There's a question.
Well, yeah. So like Elon Musk says,
Yeah.
hey, what should I sell my Tesla stock? Chandra, should I sell it around the world?
Yeah.
Yes,
That can be our
these poor people with such sad lives. All right. Well, okay. The other thing is, what's the update on your the voicemail challenge? What's happening with your iPhone?
Well, it has now been given to a place and waiting a quote to see. And also, did actually power up the devices and everything. Some of them, like one of them's like crazy smashed up at the back.
Yeah.
But it still turns on. So I was like, okay, I have hope. I have hope for these.
Well, how many were there in there?
Two phones. One which was very smashed up, but again, it turned on. I was super surprised.
I've seen photos of one of them, like, and with this person going, what is that? I'm like, that's your charging coil. It's like, oh, what's this thing? I'm like, I think that's your NFC chip or like PayWave.
You can see all of everything, and I was like, well, that one's never going to even they
were using it for their own calls and stuff.
Yeah,
they're actually still using the phone.
I it before selling it because I was like, yeah, of course I'll work out a way to doing that since the screen's never going to work. It works.
Well, there you go. There you go. All right. Well, on to our one and only segment, really, for this before random questions. I thought we'd do a Eli 5. So just for context, it's like explain like I'm 5. So take something complex and see if we can explain it in simpler terms. Did you want to go first? You've picked sailing, not downwind, whatever that means.
All right. Well,
so analogy. What?
Staying on the nautical theme.
Yep.
This is something that I learned recently once I, was on a boat. But when you think about it, if the wind is behind your boat, it kind of makes sense that, yeah, it can push you forwards. But boats don't just go downwind. They can also go into the wind or sideways to the wind. And so I was always trying to work out why is that? Because
what do you mean, why is that? Like, well, that's the way you want to go, right?
Yeah, surely if you're just pushing like if you imagine your sail like a big piece of paper and you blow on it, surely it'll just move sideways. It's just going to always move in the one direction. And for example, if the wind is coming from in front of you, how do you go towards the wind? That makes
you go side to side.
Yeah, but you're still sailing in towards the wind.
So yeah, like as in like, you angle 45, like the vector points forward, but yeah,
so that's the whole tacking thing. And you can't sail directly into the wind, and you do have to sail a little bit off to the wind. But it always confused me as to why is it that even 30 degrees, why is the wind is essentially blowing at you, but you're still going forwards in the same.
Yeah.
So it would make sense if you're going at 90 degrees and 90 degrees and 90 degrees, but you're actually going into the wind. So that always confused me as to how is that even possible? So the simplest analogy that I could find was basically imagine it like having a bar of soap in some water where you're squeezing it with both of your fingers, and you can imagine it sort of just suddenly shooting forwards.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to think of the boat like that bar of soap, you need two forces acting on it. So one is the wind that is pushing your sail, and that wind can come and one of the things to remember is that the wind that is coming towards the boat itself is just like a giant aeroplane wing on its side. So if you think about the way that aeroplane wings work, you've got faster air moving over the top, slower air moving over the bottom, and there's an effect which makes it move upwards. So that's its own thing. But essentially,
on that little note, right? Supposedly, even that is actually questionable. Physicists don't agree that that's how it works. But anyway, I only just recently discovered this.
Magic. But same sort of thing. So aeroplane wing going horizontally goes upwards. So that same thing, if you flip the wing on its side, it's pushing the boat sail acts as a wing. And so it's
like, as in you're saying the wind is pushing the sail is contouring to that airfoil shape.
actually what's happening, the wind is blowing around the sail.
Yeah.
And so it's generating lift in a sideways sort of plane.
But because it's bowing the shape of the wind, like as it pushes, it makes one side.
It does that. So it's got one side that's moving faster, one side
that's
moving slow. But then even if it does that, you think, oh, okay, the boat's just going to go sideways because it's being pushed sideways. But the big thing that I never thought about is the fact that underneath those sailboats is about 5 or 10 tons of lead, which is hanging out in the water. So even
lead,
yeah, or iron or whatever, but keel. So there's a big heavy keel on the bottom of the boat. So what happens is the sideways motion from the wind is being resisted by the big heavy mass hanging off the bottom of the boat.
And like as in against the water.
Yeah, so that's
the water's the other hand of the soap. Okay. Oh, yeah, fair enough.
Imagine your two fingers. Now you've got one finger, which is the wind pushing you one direction.
Yep.
And you've got the water and the keel pushing you the other direction. When you squeeze, you go forwards. It shoots forwards.
Huh. Well, there you go. So, yeah, I never thought about the keel or whatever that thing's called.
Yeah, never thought about that either. And I was like, I wonder why am I going forwards? This makes no sense.
I just assumed you're just doing the 45-degree vector thing. And it's kind of like, it's like the net force when you spin a cord or like centrifuge is actually heading towards the center, but you never do just to pull out. Like, it's like that weird. Yeah. So I was kind of like, it must make sense like that, but I've never actually thought about it in terms of
why can you even go 45 degrees into the wind? And this is the reason.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I was going to pick I was going to keep it medical just because I couldn't think of anything else. So I've gone with what's the difference between general anesthetics and other forms of anesthesia. So basically an anesthetic for most people is going off to sleep, right? So but what you're doing is achieving a state where the patient is anesthetized. So that means is they've got amnesia. They don't remember what's going on. They've got analgesia. They're not hurting, right? And there's some degree of immobility or relaxation as well, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're asleep, right, and someone pokes you with a pin, you're still going to move. You're going to have reflexes. Not so useful when you're trying to operate on someone if they're moving around, right? Also not so, like, if you're just asleep, you still feel pain. That's uncomfortable, right? So, and you can't.
Like a bad dream.
Yeah, except you're awake. I suppose, like, you wake up. Your body tries to wake up when you're doing these things. So one of the things that a general anesthesia does, basically, it puts your brain off to sleep so that it can't process any of the signals coming in, right? That's one big way of looking at it. The anesthetic drugs turn off the brain, then you give pain relief to dampen down all your pain nerves for, like, your brain can be off, but the moment it wakes up, you'll still get all the pain fibers firing off because you've had to literally cut the body. So you need pain relief for that. But even if you turn off the brain, your spinal cord reflexes still work because those are lower down from the brain and they have shorter reflex arcs. So if you hit the knee with a tendon hammer, you'll still get that sort of kick reflex, or if you hit your funny bone, you'll get that weird sort of sensation. So because those are localized. So then most anesthetic drugs will dampen all that stuff down as well, but you sometimes have to, that's the sort of triad of anesthesia. But if you also think about it, if you are so asleep that you're not going to move to someone cutting you, or you're not going to feel any pain, the amount of drug you're having also means that the side effects are shown. Like, that amount of analgesia means that you're going to stop breathing. Not only are you not going to move, you're not going to even move with your default things, right? So that's why anaesthetists put in breathing tubes, et cetera, to keep you alive and control the heart rates and do all that sort of stuff, because basically you are so deeply asleep that your body's not functioning properly. And that's why you train and all that stuff. But there are other forms. So it's like, hey, actually one of the very first instances before the chloroform and whatnot was you had local anesthesia. So it came from certain plants where you chewed it and they got a numb tongue. And what they realized was that you could have compounds that actually locally numb your nerves. So basically, let's say you had to operate on a finger, you could just numb the nerves of the finger, right? It doesn't numb everything totally, but it numbs enough that you can operate on it. And that's called regional anesthesia, right? So because it's a region of the body, so it's like an arm, it's a leg, it's a shoulder, all that stuff. And the big thing with that sort of a thing is you can be relatively awake or fully awake, basically, as long as the nerve is identifiable via a bunch of techniques. So the most common these days is, can you see it on ultrasound clearly? And is it far away enough away from any major structures? Like, you don't want to be poking at nerves that are right around the corner from your heart or your lungs, because you could damage things. For example, even if your ultrasound feels perfect, just in case something moves, or because you're basically trying to move a needle with an ultrasound probe, but the patient, if they're awake, is also going to move. No one can hold perfectly still, especially with breathing or coughing or whatever, right? So as long as it's not one of those nerves, you can probably block it. Like, so for example, one of our friends does shoulder surgery. So I find the nerve that goes to the shoulder in the neck, and you can see it very clearly in most people. So you can put some local anesthetic around it. You can literally see it like a bundle of nerves, and it spreads like a circle around it. And once you see enough spread, it blocks the nerve. So literally in about 3 minutes. So the moment the block's done, it takes a couple of minutes to work. The patient will be like, oh, my arms feel fine. It's like, oh, maybe a bit tingly. By the time we take them into the anesthetic bay, they literally can't lift their arms up anymore. And that's like the concept of a block. Most blocks, however, you can't get every single tiny nerve. So most of the time you add on a bit more anesthetic, either a bit of sedation or a bit more pain relief, whatnot. But the most interesting one is, for me anyway, what's called a spinal anesthetic. So instead of going for the little, like you can imagine, like you've got nerves going to your fingers and whatnot, but you also have your spinal cord, right? So the spinal cord is a big bundle of nerves, and it goes to, like, it splits off and goes in, becomes one of those terminal ones. And it's surrounded by some fluid, and it's got another sort of protective layer. So you can do an epidural or a spinal, and it's just different layers. You're just basically going into different layers of it. So basically, you can inject local anesthetic right next to the spinal cord, and it blocks everything from that level, or those few levels, right? So instead of just an arm, you'll get both legs, like everything from, say, below your diaphragm will be blocked. And it is a dense anesthetic because you're so close to the nerves themselves. So it's basically like you've turned off half the body.
Yeah, you've just cut off the nervous access to half the body.
Yeah. And the reason I find that one the most interesting is because, unlike, say, a regional, because it's small enough that the body can kind of compensate, right? Like, as in, your finger's blood supply or whatever, like the body's not good. Like, it's such a small body. Even a shoulder or an arm or a leg, relatively minor stuff. But GA, yes, you have for a general anesthetic, you've got a lot of different effects that you're going to have to compound for. But a spinal is kind of like this weird hybrid where it's half the body and the patient's awake usually. Like, if you're doing a spinal, usually you want them awake for whatever reason, right? Like for a cesarean or something like that.
Just pain, right?
Sorry?
Nerves are important for more than just pain and sensation.
Well, I mean, they're moving, they're for everything, right? Like, it's also controlling, though you don't have direct control of how much blood's going in and out for, your vasomotor tone and stuff. But so spinals are very interesting because they're relatively awake. They can feel the side effects.
Oh, right.
And you'll feel like, because basically every time you do a spinal, the ability of your vessels to constrict and raise your blood pressure, if you're feeling faint, that goes away because they don't have that tone anymore, right? So some people get a really exaggerated response. They go from being okay to fully feeling faint to essentially fainting, but not, like, the body not being able to compensate for it. So you get these weird sort of like the symptoms that you wouldn't see if you were fully asleep, right? So it becomes an interesting challenge because you want them awake, because that's why you're doing the block most of the time, right? But you also have to balance enough of an anesthetic and enough of an intervention to get it just right so that you can have someone comfortably awake while half their body's asleep. And it's also just, if you think about it, just a weird state to be in. It's like you're looking at your legs, not being able to move it, and you know someone's doing something to them, right?
Yeah,
And you can
I guess that's
hear.
to even the local anesthetic though, right? Like
Yeah.
some similarities where it's like having a numb hand or something, or a numb finger from, I don't know if you held some ice too long or something like that.
Well, it's just
You-
like, when you're dead leg from sitting down for too long. It's
yeah,
that, but the extreme version of that.
yeah.
Yeah. But I wonder, was that a good enough explanation for the differences between?
To reassure people, it works well, by the way.
Oh, yeah, it works. Like, I mean, we do all forms of this day in, day out, like all the time. So these are all highly, highly effective forms, and it's been done for centuries. There's actually, you can look up the genesis of the spinal anesthetic, and it was literally beer from the Beers Block guy. And I think it was like Freud or one of the psychologists, they basically got drunk one day and they realized that cocaine was a local anesthetic. And they just basically started jabbing each other in the spine and injecting stuff, and one went numb. And it's hilarious because
They sound like a fun bunch, but anyway.
but basically, like once like the legs went numb, like this guy got a hammer and started whacking the other guy with it.
And anesthetics was born.
I'll actually link to it. It is actually like I was laughing so hard when I was reading it. But yeah. Let us know if that was a good enough explanation for general versus regional. Did that make sense? Or did Chandra's sailing downwind make sense?
Or did neither make sense?
Yeah, that's probably the more common outcome. All right, last little segment, because it is now Dota time, well past Dota time.
Well, this is metaverse research time. That's what you meant.
What?
Dota is just metaverse research time.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Dota coin, like launch a new ICO.
Yeah.
So I had a question that came up from yesterday. Like I was talking to a friend, and it was, what's a ritual or habit that you've normally taken for granted, like you've just either done and not really paid attention to, but you've come to appreciate as time's gone on, and or as you've gotten older? Do you want to take it first, or do you want me to do it?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the things which I initially thought, and I was like, what's the point of this, is gratitude journaling. So I've never really journaled for a long time at all, and then I sort of started doing it just as a regular thing, and I have to say it does make a difference. And I think
in what way?
One of the biggest things I noticed is it's very easy to go, I need to get the next success working because I haven't reached X level of arbitrary level of success, because every time you achieve something, you're like, well, that was easy. That wasn't very meaningful. You need to achieve something more. Whereas,
well, actually, do you want to clarify what you mean by gratitude journaling?
Yeah, sure. So for me, gratitude journaling is very simply just writing down, and I try to do every day, just 3 things that I'm thankful for. And it could be quite variable. It could just be that, it's a really nice day and it's sunny and I'm sitting outside today, through to, oh, hey, I, finished some big project yesterday and that was really satisfying. So it could be anything really on that spectrum. But the interesting thing I've found is that by doing that, I'm more aware of each of those little things and how good things are, in a sense, because it's easy to go, oh man, when things are not going well, it's like, everything sucks, everything's bad, nothing's going well. But objectively, if you start paying attention to even just the little things that are good, sometimes it's the little things that are good that really remind you that, oh yeah, things are pretty good, life is all right. So that's one, I suppose, I never really paid attention to before, and it was only after I started doing it did I see the benefits myself.
I've been doing that for a little while, and I will say the other benefit that I found was looking back like a year or two later, because one of the things I found was once you flick through, because it's for me, like I always have a Muji paper journal and I can flick through quite easily. Like the number of times coffee came out as like number one thing that I was like, and I just realized I really enjoy my morning coffee, and it leads into my one. But I really enjoyed like the ritual of going and getting a coffee, not so much making it. Like I enjoy making it too, but it was just going down and getting it. But the other thing was like public transport came out over and over again. Like I really like PT. It's basically like an expressway to, like, all the hospitals I work at are pretty close to train stations. So you just jump in, avoid the traffic, get out, and you can listen to a podcast, edit photos, whatever on the way. So it's just like, if I could have my own special highway, was public transport. Like I live not to, So and what was the other one? There's like three things that kept on coming up. So I'm now no longer allowed to write those three things because those are like, I basically given myself no budget for coffees. If I want a coffee, I just go get a coffee. In public transport, like it's cheaper than driving most of the time. But the other thing it's like, it's related to the cafe thing, is because I really enjoy going down and ordering a coffee from a local cafe. And I realized I do this in, like, one of the subconscious things I do on holidays is I will pick one thing that I'll keep doing over and over again, and it's usually the coffee. I'll usually go to the same place if it's good, just to get to, like, how, and I didn't realize that I was playing this game subconsciously, but the subconscious game is how quickly can I rock up to a place so that they know me, so that I don't actually have to order anything. They know exactly what I want, so I just pay for it and I can chit chat, right? AKA, how quickly can I become a local? And the reason is, like, there's a few cafes here, like I now know most of the baristas. But when I first moved here, I used to go to just one, right? And earlier this year, or whenever the last lockdown ended, I caught up with a friend in Richmond, which is like 3 suburbs away from here. And I rocked up to this cafe that I've never been to. And I sat down and we were like about to order, and the barista lady came over and she's like, Raffy, right? And I'm like, the hell? And I was like, I kind of know you from somewhere too. She's like, and you normally have this coffee. I'm like, okay. And basically, she used to work downstairs. And she couldn't put, like, she's like, I don't know where I know you from. I'm like, yeah, you look familiar too. And it was the fact that because of this little, like, because, if you think about it, baristas have a very one-sided thing. They all get to know your name. You don't necessarily know their name.
Yeah.
Because they have to give you your order. So it was this thing where I was just like, oh, and it was just, it's like this little form of connection in a community. And you just go, that was quite nice. Like, as in, I'd never been there, but I felt like that was more homely than any other cafe I've been to, even though it was the same as most cafes. It's just the fact that someone kind of knows you, and it's just nice, especially if you live in a big city and you go, oh, you feel a bit anonymous. And it's like this little thing that I was like, that's kind of just nice, just having these little, like, they don't have to know you well, but these little acquaintances that know just enough that you can chit chat to.
Sounds like kind of like the concept of local communities.
Oh, actually, on a very random note of that, right? So in terms of there's another place downstairs that I think I've gotten coffee once from. I just don't like it, but they do really good, like, Indian food for lunch. So they have biryani and stuff. I think we got this once when we did the podcast up in one of the other levels.
Place.
You know that place, the soup place?
Yeah.
So I was just chatting to the barista there, and he was like, oh, yeah, and I don't like normally mentioning that in a medical, because someone always has some sort of other question, and especially currently it's all about vaccines.
I've got a rash.
Yeah. And especially when you're just trying to have lunch, you're like, not what I want to think about. But anyway, it somehow came out that, I was going to work hospital, and he was like, oh, yeah, I used to work at one of the hospitals, like, he used to work at Monash, where I used to work, right? Sorry, no, I was saying that I used to work at Monash, and he's like, oh, yeah, the barista's there, And I mentioned one name because that's the only barista's name I can remember. There's a couple of others that I used to know, right? And he's like, so-and-so. I'm like, yeah, that guy. Is like, oh, that guy's my brother. So, like, it was just like the weirdest small world syndrome thing where he's like, yeah, that's my brother. He's like doing this. I was like, yeah, because I took some, like, keep in touch. But it was just like, it's a small world after all syndrome playing out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So was it the sort of the part that you've come to appreciate more? Is it just those random connections, or just seeking those out, or?
The fact that, well, I just never realized that I appreciated the fact that I was a regular, like, to the extent that I thought I did. Like, I knew I like going and getting a coffee, but I thought it was just that, the action of going and getting a coffee. But what I realized was it's not that specifically. Like, I do, but there is the deeper part of actually becoming a local as fast as I can, so that you can have those little chit chats and be a local just by proxy, right? And you can do this anywhere you go. And the other thing is, you can't do it quickly unless you're willing to be a bit weird. Like you'd have to stand out enough that you can't just be another coffee Joe, right?
Yeah.
But you can't be too weird because otherwise they'll just kick you out because they don't know you.
They just close up as you walk on.
Yeah, so because I only realized this, I was talking to this friend yesterday about just life in general. He's going through a bit of a tough time, and somehow it came up, and I was like, yeah. And it just whilst I was talking to him, like, that is literally what I do. I will find some random obscure thing that's just left a field to try, like, as in I remember last few times I've gone on a trip and stuff of trying, oh yeah, I should comment about this weird thing. But I never knew why that even popped into my head. And I realized after this chat yesterday, that it was because I was trying to get to local as fast as I can. And the way you do that is going and being interesting enough or memorable enough so that they remember you, so that your coffee next time, they already go, oh, that guy's that order because he's weird, but not too weird.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like you want to be memorable, but not, oh, better spit in his coffee this time as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was actually kind of insightful because I'd never realized this before. Anyway, that's all we have time for. Any last comments or requests?
No, it sounds like the season is coming up for a wrap soon, but we will definitely keep you posted.
Yeah, and actually on that note, we are probably going to have a slightly different structure next year. This is the perfect time to send us some feedback if you have some, either via the podcast@photosbyraffi.com or via voicemail, because we're going to be probably planning out a bit of a better calendar system for next year. So this will actually help guide the podcast into whatever you want.
Yeah. Another cue for the audience is which segments did you like the best?
Yeah.
Should we keep going with?
And which ones like really sucked? Because we should probably abandon those two.
We'll still do them anyway, just to annoy you in particular.
All right. With that, adios.
Bye-bye.
Yo.